Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Abiola, and in today's video we'll be drafting this beautiful dress. As you can see, this is the outcome of my own dress. Guys, yesterday I posted a video of me cutting out this dress directly on the fabric, but the chalk was not really clear, so I decided to draft it again on paper so that everybody can see it clearly. Okay, so in today's video what we're doing basically is drafting the dress I had already cut, which I posted yesterday. If you want to see that video, I'll have a linked in the description box below. In that particular video, I cut everything directly on the fabric, but the chalk wasn't really clear. In this one, I will be drafting the same thing, but this time around on paper. And the joining tutorial or sewing tutorial will be posted immediately after this one. So let's begin. The first thing we are going to do is to mark our shoulder width divided by 2. Her shoulder width is 17 divided by 2 gives me 8.5, which is what I just marked, and the neckline I'm working with is 3 inches. And I'll go down from the shoulder by 1 inch because our shoulder is not straight, and connect that to the 3-inch neckline. After which I'll mark out the bust point, which is 10 inches, and the waistline, which is 17 inches. I'll try to form a straight line by marking the 10 inches at the other point so that my straight line can, be formed properly. Then I'll go ahead and also mark my waistline and try to get a straight line as well. Then I'll go ahead to use my meter rule to get a straight line. Then I'll label that the bust point BP, then the waistline W. Then I will mark 1/2 inch seam allowance at the end, which I will be using to join the top to the lower part of the outfit, that's the skirt part. The next step is to mark her armhole line. That is gotten by dividing her bust by 6 inches plus 1.5 inch, which gives me 8.33. I just marked 8.5. I rounded it up to 8.5, and I tried my best to get a straight line, like I always say. So I went ahead to connect that to the center front using my meter rule. Then I went ahead to connect that with my meter rule, after which I went ahead to label that UCL, which implies upper chest line. Then I took my shoulder width divided by 2 on the upper chest line, which is 8.5, and I connected that to the shoulder point. The next step is to find the midpoint of that line, and that will give me 4.25, and I will go in by 0.5 inches. This will enable us get our curve, our armhole curve for the front pattern. Okay, so I went in with my curved ruler and I connected from the shoulder to the 0.5 point. So I went in with my curved ruler, I'm repeating myself, and I connected from that point to the 0.5 point. Then the next thing I did was to take her bust measurement divided by 4 on the upper chest line point. Her bust measurement divided by 4 gave me 10.25. Her bust is 41 divided by 4 gave me 10.25, which I went ahead to connect to that 0.5 point. And as you can see, our front armhole curve is formed. Okay, now the next step is to take our neck depth. The neck depth I worked with yesterday, and I'm going to still use the same thing, is 3.5 inches, and I connected that using the curved ruler to form the neck line. Okay, when I was done with that, the next thing I did was to take the waist measurement on the waistline. The waist I'm working with is 32.5 divided by 4, which is 8.125, and that's what I marked there, and I'm connecting that to the upper chest line. Now it's time to add our allowance, and I worked with 1.5 inch allowance because the person wanted a lot of allowance so that they can adjust the clothes as they see fit. So I added 1.5 inch allowance at that upper chest line area. Then at the waist I also added the same 1.5 inch allowance. Then I added 1 inch for that. That's what I marked now. Then I went ahead to connect the points using my meter rule as usual. After connecting the points, the next step will be to mark the dart. Her nipple to nipple measurement is 7 inches. 7 divided by 2 gives me 3.5, which I marked there. I also went ahead to mark that same 3.5 on the bust point. Then I went ahead to connect the points using my meter rule. The length of the dart that I'll be working with is 5 inches. That's what I used for the dress. Then I used my tape measure to mark out 5 inches. Then on each sides of the line, I'll take 0.5 inch allowance. The width of the dart is 1 inch, so I took 0.5 on each side of that line, and I connected that to my 5-inch point. So that is set and our front pattern is ready. So I went ahead to label that point the center front, and we're going to cut that part on fold. So I marked that place like that. Then I wrote the front pattern so that we'll differentiate that from the back pattern. The next step is to cut out the back pattern. The next thing I did was just to, transfer all the lines to the other end of the paper so that it will be easy for me to draft my back pattern. As I did in front, I went ahead to mark the shoulder, which is 8.5 inches. That's 17 divided by 2, 8.5. Then the same neckline, which I marked 3 inches. Then for the back neckline, I will come down by 1 inch, not 3.5 like we did in front, just 1 inch. And I'll go ahead to use my curved ruler to connect that. Again, our shoulder is not straight, so I'm going to come down by 1 inch and connect that to the neckline using my meter rule. After that, I am going to mark the shoulder width on the upper chest line like I did in front as well, and that is 8.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead now and use my tape rule to mark that, and I'll connect that using my meter rule to form the armhole line. Then the next thing is to form the armhole curve, and that's another thing that is different from the front. I'll take the midpoint like I did in front as well, which is 4.25 inches. We're not going in by 0.5 inches. This time around, I will mark the bust divided by 4 again like I did in front, which is 10.25 inches. So I went ahead to mark that, and I came in with my curved ruler and I connected from that point that I marked to the other part. So our front and our back neckline are different, and the front and back armhole are also different. So I'm going to mark this back pattern. Okay, then the next thing is basically the same as we did in front. I marked out 8.125 on the waistline and connected that to the armhole area. Added 1.5 inch like I did in front, and here added 1.5 inch and 1 inch for that. Same thing we did in front. Now I'm also going to mark my dart at the back, and it's also going to be 5 inch in length. Okay, same thing I did, half inch on both sides, and I'll connect it. So same thing I did in front. So that's why I'm fast forwarding it, so let's not waste our time. Then I went ahead to add more paper so that we can mark out our zip allowance and get rid of zip bulge. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to connect the lines so that they match. Okay, connect the lines to the extra paper I just added. I'm going to mark 1 inch for zip allowance from the beginning to the end. Okay, so I went ahead to mark that from beginning to the end. Then on the waistline, I am going to go in by 0.5 inches from that 1 inch point. Okay, then I'm going to use my long ruler to connect from that 0.5 inch to the top. This is going to get rid of a zipper bulge, but there's one more thing we're going to do to totally get rid of any zipper bulge. Okay, but before we do that, I'm going to get rid of the lines that we don't need. That's the one I marked bad. Okay, like this, we don't need those lines anymore. So the next thing I'm going to do is to come up from that point by 0.5 inch. Okay, so that you guys will see this properly, I'm going to use this black marker to mark the stuff bad. Then I'm also going to use the black marker to connect what I want you guys to see. We'll go up by 0.5 inches and connect to that end. Can you guys see? Yeah, so that's exactly what we are going to do to totally get rid of zipper bulge. So I'm going to go ahead to cut that out right now. Okay, after cutting that out, the next thing we need to do is a quick calculation. Okay, so normally the dress length I'm working with is 39 inches, and the half cut or upper bodice is 17 inches. So the skirt length that I'll be working with is going to be 39 minus 17, which will be 22 inches. And the skirt has gathers, so the gathers length I want to work with is going to be 10 inches. That's the gathers length I would like to work with. So that will lead us to calculate our final skirt length. That is, when you subtract the gathers from the skirt length, now you get your final skirt length, like the proper skirt length you would want to work with. So the final skirt length I would be working with is going to be 22 minus 10 inches. Okay, and that's going to give me 12 inches. For the skirt part, the first thing I'm going to mark is my starting line, because this paper is uneven at the top and I don't want that to disrupt my measurement. After which I'll mark ½ inch allowance. Okay, ½ inch allowance I'm going to use to connect the skirt to the half cut or the upper bodies. Next thing I'll mark is her hip point. Her hip point is 11 inches, and that's what I just marked, her hip point, and I'm going to connect that to form a straight line, and I will, label that as well. Now the final skirt length is 12 inches, so I'm going to mark 12 inches on this ruler, and I'm going to connect that as well. And I'm going to go ahead and add 0.5-inch allowance as well, that I will use to join this part to the gathers part. Okay, does that make any sense? Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and mark 0.5-inch allowance and connect that to form a straight line. Yeah, so I'm going to mark the waist divided by 4, which is 8.125. Okay, and I'll add 1.5-inch allowance and 1 inch for that, like we did at the upper bodies. Then I marked the hip circumference divided by 4, 45 divided by 4, which is 11.25 plus 1.5-inch allowance. Then I connected that. Just add any allowance of your choice. Then from the waistline, I came down by 5 inches and I went in by 1.5 inches, which is our allowance. Okay, then from that point I connected to the end using my curved ruler. This is how I want the shape of mine to be. You can do yours to be any shape you would want it to be. The next thing I did was to mark my zip allowance at the back, which is 1.5 inches. I marked that and I connected that to form a straight line, after which I decided to cut out the front part of the skirt and I trimmed off the starting line area, and I used that to trace that of the back. Okay, so I labeled that front skirt, then I used this to trace that of the back so that I can be fast with this drafting. Okay, then when I was done doing that, I went ahead to trace the lines properly using my curved ruler and my meter rule. Okay, then when I was done with that, it's time to shape our back. Then I came out on the waistline by 0.5 inches, and on the hip line I came out by 1.5 inches on the hip line. Then the allowance I came out by 1.5 and I connected that into a straight line, and then went ahead to use my curve to connect that to the 0.5-inch allowance at the top. Hence we now have our zip allowance, and I'm going to go ahead to label that and cut that out using my scissors. The next step is to come in by 0.5 inches and connect that to the edge. This is to get rid of the excess that is usually found at the tummy area, and we're basically done. And let's mark our allowance on the skirt part, 3.5 inches but 4 inches in length, and I'll take 0.5 inch on both sides, which equals 1 inch, and I'll connect that. I'll do the same thing on the front skirt, 3.5 inches, and I'll come down by 4 inches. Yeah, the mark through 0.5 inches on both sides. Okay, 0.5 inch on both sides, and I'll connect that, and that's about that. We are basically done drafting this cloth. This is what I have when I was done. Now over to the gathers. You remember our calculation. Our gathers is supposed to be 10 inches in length, but plus 0.5 inches for joining to the skirt and plus 1 inch for hemming the end. I cut out 11.5 inches. Okay, that's what I measured out, and that's what I'll be working with. For the width of the gathers, I really wanted these gathers to be very full, so I cut out 143 inches. Okay, these gathers I cut them out in 2 places, 143 inches in width and 11.5 inches in length. And the sewing tutorial of this dress will be up a few hours after this one goes up. Just expect it, and if you want to be the first to receive it when I upload it, subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you'll be the first to get it when I upload the video. Thank you guys for your support so far. I really do appreciate. So guys, I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.